Okay, so who really is the worst Power 4 program in recent memory? Well, last week on Twitter, I came across a tweet by Brett McMurphy who talked about the Power 4 teams that have the worst records against other Power Conference teams. He went through the list, and a lot of these results ended up shocking me, and in today's video, we are truly going to talk about who are the worst Power 4 teams in America, and I'm going to give my pick as to who is dead last. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about who is the worst power team in all of college football. Okay, so we have 12 teams to talk about today, and the first one is going to be the Arkansas Razorbacks. Going back to the 2024 season, Arkansas has struggled horrendously at beating Power 4 teams. Their only wins last year would come against Auburn, Tennessee, and Mississippi State, and that upset over the Volunteers was pretty crazy. They also got a win over Texas Tech in the Liberty Bowl, but besides that, they had lots of losses. In 2025 so far, they don't have a victory over a Power 4 team. They have wins over Alabama A&M and Arkansas State, but they are currently on a 6-game losing streak. The last time Arkansas beat a Power 4 team was the bowl game last year, and they should be able to get one this weekend as they play Mississippi State at home in a battle of two teams who haven't won a conference game in a long time. Arkansas is really bad, but I don't think they're the worst over the last 2 years. Expectations were super high for Arizona football in 2024 after Jedd Fisch built them up in 2023. Unfortunately, new head coach Brent Brennan was not able to get things going, as last year, the Wildcats only had 2 wins over Power 4 teams. Those wins came against Houston and a top 10 Utah team that ended up being terrible, and besides that, they got blown out in pretty much all of their games last year. Heading into 2025, they lost a couple of their key weapons, but they have improved. They got a win over Kansas State in week 3, and then a couple weeks ago they got a win against Oklahoma State. They've lost back-to-back close games, and their best remaining opportunity for more Power 4 wins will come these next 2 weeks against Colorado and Kansas. Like Arkansas, Arizona has been bad, but not that bad. Our third team to talk about is the Michigan State Spartans, who I would argue are really abysmal right now. Last year, in their first year under head coach Jonathan Smith, there was some optimism after an early win on the road against Maryland, but since then, they haven't done much. They got a win over Iowa, which is probably Jonathan Smith's best win to date, and then they beat Purdue, who was one of the worst teams of all time in college football last year, so that barely counts. This year, they ended up getting a win over Boston College, who's the worst team in the ACC, and then since then, they've dropped off 5 straight losses. Michigan State is now 4-12 in the last 2 years against Power 4 teams, and they really are bad. Surprisingly, despite having a 5-2 record this year, Wake Forest is still one of the worst Power 4 teams in recent memory. Going back to the 2024 season and the final year of Dave Clawson, Wake struggled. They only ended up beating 2 Power 4 teams on their schedule in NC State and Stanford, both of which came on the road, and they ended up going 4-8 in total. 2025 has been a little bit better, as under first-year head coach Jake Dickert, they now have 2. They beat Virginia Tech and then most recently SMU by way of a crazy field goal, so the Demon Deacons' current record against Power 4 teams in the last 2 years is 4-9. It's once again one of the worst, but not the worst. Under Hugh Freeze, Auburn has not been able to get things going, and he has arguably been worse than Brian Harsin, who many Auburn fans claim to be the worst coach in the history of football. Auburn got 2 Power 4 wins in 2024, as one of them came on the road against Kentucky, and the other was a 4-overtime upset against number 15 Texas A&M. It was tough sledding for Hugh Freeze in 2024 and hasn't gotten much better in 2025. They got 1 early road win against Baylor, which was honestly pretty impressive, and then this past week they ended up beating Arkansas, but so far this year they've already lost 4 games against Power 4 opponents, and Auburn's current record is 4-11 in the last 2 seasons. Wisconsin used to be one of the most respectable programs in college football that year in and year out was a threat to go to a big bowl game and usually dominated the teams that were a lot worse than them. Ever since Luke Fickell came in, it has been a mess though. In 2024, Wisconsin ended up getting 3 total Power 4 wins, as those came against Rutgers, Northwestern, and Purdue. If you do the math, those were 3 of the worst teams in the Big Ten last year, but they did blow all those teams out. They weren't really competitive in the back half of last year's schedule, and this year has been 100 times worse. After getting 2 early wins against Miami of Ohio and Middle Tennessee, who are both awful, they have now lost 6 straight games against Power 4 teams. None of them have actually even been close, and Wisconsin's in a horrible spot right now. The Badgers are currently 3-13 in the last 2 years against Power 4 teams, and I don't see anything getting better on the horizon anytime soon for Wisconsin. Getting into our next tier, we first need to talk about the Maryland Terrapins. I am honestly sick and tired of hearing about how Mike Locksley is supposed to be a big-time coach, as Maryland literally doesn't seem to do anything every year. They beat up on bad teams, knock off a team at the bottom of the Big Ten, and then just sort of fall apart in the last half of the season. They have followed that script for a while now, as going back to the 2024 season, Maryland had 2 wins over Power 4 teams. One of them was a road victory against Virginia, and the other was a 1-point win over USC. Besides that, they got blown out in pretty much all of their games last season. Everyone acts like Locksley is this big-time coach. Going into 2025, he had a new big-time freshman quarterback in Malik Washington, but things still haven't really changed all that much. Sure, they beat up on FAU, Northern Illinois, and Towson, but besides a win over Wisconsin, they have now dropped 3 straight games to Power 4 teams. To be fair, these matchups have been closer than last season, but still, Maryland is 3-12 in the last 2 years against Power 4 teams, and for all these other coaches being on the hot seat, I have no clue why he isn't. He doesn't win big games, he doesn't beat Power 4 teams, and they fall apart at the end of the season literally every year now. Who knows though, that's just me, and hopefully I'm not hating on Maryland football too much here. For our 5th team remaining, we're going to talk about the Florida State Seminoles. Everybody knows the drill at this point. Florida State had a spectacular 2023 season, in which you could argue they got robbed of a college football playoff spot, and ever since then, it has been a disaster. New quarterback DJ Uiagalelei was horrible. The Florida State Seminoles would only have 2 wins total, and only one against a Power 4 team, and that came against Cal in late September. 2025 looked to be a lot different for Florida State, as after knocking off a top 10 Alabama team in week 1, they have been unable to beat a Power 4 team since. They lost to Virginia in that crazy double overtime game, made it close late against Miami, lost a close game against Pittsburgh, and then had the heartbreaking ending against Stanford. Florida State is a lot closer this season than they were last year, but they are still currently abysmal against Power 4 teams. As of right now, over the last 2 years, they are 2-13 in total, but I think they'll get at least another win or 2 this season. For our 4th to last team, let's talk about the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Everyone knows it is hard to win in Starkville and it's hard to win in the SEC, but you'd think they'd be a little bit better than this. Last season, in year 1 under head coach Jeff Lebby, the Bulldogs were not able to beat a Power 4 team. They weren't really able to beat anyone, to be honest, as their only wins came against UMass and Eastern Kentucky. While there were a couple of close finishes, Mississippi State was just bad last year. They had 0 wins over Power 4 teams. This year really has not been any better, as they finally got their first Power 4 win against number 12 Arizona State, and then since then they've had a couple of heartbreakers. They could have beat Tennessee, could have beat Florida, and could have beat Texas. Mississippi State seems to be a program that chokes away close games, and in the last 2 years, Mississippi State is 1-13. That is awful. At number 3, we have the Kentucky Wildcats. It seems like Mark Stoops is finally losing his touch, as he might get run out of Lexington here soon with these kind of results. Going back to 2024, Kentucky's losing streak against power teams began, as they only ended up having 1. That came against number 6 Ole Miss in a crazy upset victory on the road, but besides that, they only had wins over Murray State, Southern Miss, and Ohio. Things have not improved at all in 2025, as they still have not beaten a Power 4 team this year. They lost to Ole Miss, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee. The Texas and Ole Miss games were close, and they had a good shot at knocking off the Longhorns, but they blew it. To finish out the year, they'll play Auburn and Florida, which they might have a chance at beating, but I don't think they beat Vanderbilt or Louisville, and it would not surprise me if Kentucky ends up only winning the game against Tennessee Tech. Over the last 2 years, the Wildcats are 1-13, and they are also horrible. Oklahoma State has also been terrible the last 2 seasons, as going back to 2024, the fall-off really began. They ended up getting a win over Arkansas in double overtime, but after that, they completely screwed up their schedule. They lost 9 straight games against Power 4 teams and went 0-9 in Big 12 conference play. 2025 has managed to be even worse for Cowboys fans, as after an early win over UT Martin, they have now dropped 6 straight games against Power 4 teams and even lost at home to Tulsa. They are currently 0-5 in the Big 12, they don't have a quarterback, they don't have a pulse, and they have to find a new head coach. The Mike Gundy era is over, and I don't think they beat Kansas, K-State, UCF, or Iowa State, and Oklahoma State in the last 2 seasons is now 1-15 against Power 4 teams. They are horrible. And finally, we get to our last school on the list, who also happens to be the worst Power 4 program right now, and that is without a doubt the Purdue Boilermakers. Horrible these last 2 seasons, as last year they ended up losing 10 straight games against Power 4 teams, and also lost to Oregon State, who's kind of a power team. If you want to count that, they would have been 0-11 against them, but instead they ended up being 0-10. Despite getting rid of one of the worst head coaches in college football in Ryan Walters, things have not improved a bit under Barry Odom. Sure, they beat Ball State and Southern Illinois in weeks 1 and week 2, but they have continued the streak. They have now lost 6 games against Power 4 opponents this season, and the Minnesota and Rutgers games were close, but besides that, they have been beat pretty handily in each one of those games. Sadly for Purdue fans, they still have to play Ohio State and Indiana, who are 1 and 2, travel on the road to a ranked Michigan team, and then travel on the road to a good Washington team. I think they're going to lose 4 more by the time the season is over, and in total, Purdue is now 0-16 in the last 2 years against Power 4 teams. They are horrible, and that could end up being 0-20, which would be the worst stretch in school history. Now I'm going to go ahead and put up that graphic by Brett McMurphy, and hopefully I didn't mess anything up, as this tweet was over a week ago, so it is outdated by a week, but hopefully I wasn't an idiot and messed anything up here with the math. But yeah, today we talked about the worst Power 4 teams in college football, and what surprised and what shocked you. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down below, who you think the worst Power 4 program is, and what other topic I should cover on the channel. Before you go, don't forget to also leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.